Hello and welcome to coverage of the finals of U.S. Nationals. Maria Bartholdi in the booth with Reed Duke. It has all come down to this. Justin Andrews on Esper Control, Dylan Brown on Blue Black Mid-Range. Whew. All right, Reed. Which two of these decks do you prefer in this matchup?
I'm going to pick Justin Andrews with the wild take on the archetype. He's got a lot of powerful stuff. He has clearly, maybe I shouldn't make judgments, but it seems to me that he has played a lot and identified the ways that he likes to navigate these situations and built his deck accordingly. It's not like this is a player who just phoned it in by copying a deck. I think he really put in the hours, chose the cards that he wanted to play with and see as often as possible, and I think he's got a good plan.
All right, and we are underway here in game number 1. Glint Sleeve Siphoner in play for Dylan Brown. A card that a lot of decks have chosen to leave out thanks to Goblin Chain Whirler, but others have chosen to say, you know what, it's so excellent in control matchups that I'm going to leave it in.
Yeah, it's pretty special to have a card that costs as little as 2 mana and really demands an answer. Now here you see Dylan already pulling way ahead in the game because he's got his little Dark Confidant effect. He gets to draw an extra card, he gets to put some pressure on, and now it's up to Justin to find an answer to this and keep pace at the same time. I mean, Dylan gets to spend his mana on potentially another creature or a reactive card this turn.
It also hits for 2.
Definitely.
Justin down to 18 here. There's a look at Dylan Brown. And Doomfall will be his play this turn. We're going to get a look here at Justin's hand. We have a Champion of Wits, a Teferi, and a couple of Yeheni's Expertise.
Okay, so tricky situation. There's not really any way for Dylan Brown to keep his Glint Sleeve Siphoner around in the long run. It looks like, Justin's going to make his 3rd land drop. Dylan's going to not be able to draw a card. He'll attack one more time, and then the Siphoner will bite the dust. So the options available to him are he could take away the Glint Sleeve, the Champion of Wits, which is a nice play for 2 reasons. Number one, it strands Justin potentially with nothing to spend his mana on next turn, and a card with the graveyard ability, you get to exile it permanently. You never have to worry about it again. But he could also just take Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, as that's one of the most powerful cards in the format and in Justin's hand and deck in general.
It's going to be the Champion of Wits. That's the choice for Dylan Brown, so Justin will discard that card. Back over to Dylan. No play there for Justin. And maybe Dylan has other ways to handle Teferi. Glint Sleeve Siphoner in for 2 here. Justin will fall down to 16, netting 2 energy for Dylan. Teferi number 2 for Justin. And there is the Expertise.
I think Dylan is setting up a nice sequence here. He drew a 2nd Siphoner, but of course didn't want to cast it into the known Yeheni's Expertise. But this turn he'll hit his 5th land drop, play a Glint Sleeve Siphoner, pass, expecting his opponent to play the Teferi, which is known, and then he'll meet it with Supreme Verdict.
All right, so nice sequencing.
Nice sequence, nice use of mana, nice way to keep the board clear and continue pressing his advantage with the Siphoner.
Not for nothing, too. Dylan just got off of a very, very long semifinals game. And I got to imagine that's got to just be mentally taxing when you've just got to shuffle up and start a new one.
Oh, absolutely right. Yeah, the physical endurance, mental endurance of an event like this, where these players they're in their 16th round of play here, and Dylan just played a marathon, untimed, 1 hour and 46-minute match. So, the human mind can only stretch so far. You use up all your hit points at a certain point, and and you got to, you can't have 100% focus for that many hours without taking a break.
Glint Sleeve Siphoner number 2 hits the table here for Dylan Brown. 4 energy now in play.
I remember one particular event where it was the top 8 of Star City Games .com Invitational, where the matches were all best 3 out of 5, and I played a 5-game set, barely advanced, played another 5-game set, barely advanced, then when the finals started, I had already played Magic for like 6 hours that day, and I quite literally couldn't see straight. The cards in my hand were like morphing in front of me. I'm like, yeah, this is just, this is too much.
I believe it. Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, met with that Supreme Will, as predicted. And we're able to draw an extra card here, pay some life, thanks to that Glint Sleeve Siphoner. So things turning out pretty nicely here for Dylan Brown, at least in the early game. Hits in for another 2. Justin will fall to 16. And we'll pass the turn back. What card or cards, in your opinion, are kind of keys to this matchup? If we see them, it should be a hint that some player is taking control pretty strongly.
Well, definitely the Scarab God. But the tricky thing about this matchup is the answers are really, really effective, and in some ways they're better than the threats. Vraska's Contempt is just a really clean answer to absolutely any card, up to and including the Scarab God and Teferi. So a lot of the fight is based on the number of lands in play and the number of cards in hand. Dylan Brown, for example, won his Game 3 of the semifinals in large part due to Argel's Bloodfast, just keeping his hand stocked, having all those Vraska's Contempts and being able to answer his opponent's threats. But, grinding little 2-for-1s, making sure you can line up your answers at the right time against the right threat. These are the tactics that the players are going to need to employ in order to win. And the only surefire sign that someone's taking control is when the Scarab God starts getting activated.
Yahenni's Expertise, number 2 out of Justin's hand. Dylan did know about that. By the way, if you're noticing those upside down cards in Justin's hand, that's to remind him which cards Dylan has seen. It's a neat little trick.
Yeah, it's a cool technique.
So Dylan knew that Glint Sleeve Siphoner wasn't long for this world. We are going to go ahead and cycle a Fetid Pools here. Cycling all around. I'm a big fan of those lands, by the way.
Yeah, they're really strong.
Go in any kind of deck. Not just these control or mid-range decks. Here's Teferi, Hero of Dominaria from Justin Andrus.
And this is just a beating because I see Dylan Brown has 2 copies of Essence Scatter, and this is where the fact that Justin has gone off the beaten path and diversified his threats instead of just having all Scarab Gods and Torrential Gearhulks, which would have played into the hands of the Essence Scatters, he has wider diversity, and Teferi is just the perfect threat to slip through the answers of Dylan Brown.
So Teferi will tick up to 5 here for Justin. And here is a never to return from Dylan Brown.
Good answer. That's sort of Vraska's Contempt number 5.
Handy for the Scarab God as well.
Yeah, most definitely.
Champion of Wits for Justin Andrus.
So Dylan can Essence Scatter that, but that's a tough way to fight through because the real threat actually comes from the graveyard and not from the hardcast mode. But, the players have seen one another's deck list, and Dylan knows that there's, I think it might only be 4 creatures in Justin's deck, the 2 Champion of Wits and the 2 Scarab Gods.
So might as well.
At any rate, it's a small number. And oh, wow, the return is perfect. The combination of Essence Scatter and return just takes care of it right away.
Okay, so heading into exile with the other Champion of Wits. And we're going to crack an Evolving Wilds here for Justin Andrus. Yeah, and you mentioned it. And here, at the top of this match, the way that Andrus has built his deck, not using cards like Torrential Gearhulk, we can now see the benefits playing out live on screen. Those Essence Scatters in Dylan Brown's hand, dead.
Here you see him cashing in Supreme Will. The players are getting to a stage where, they might have enough mana to pay the extra 3, plus also a stage where if you find one of those big payoff cards like Teferi or the Scarab God, you can just run away with it.
So Supreme Will on Impulse here for Justin. We'll find him a card. Doomfall.
Take a look at the hand.
Right, we have, there's another one, Fatal Push, Essence Scatter, and a Vraska's Contempt for Dylan Brown.
Fatal Push, very ineffective against Justin Andrus' deck.
Those kind of cards, Fatal Push, I mean, you've got half the field, or more, playing Goblin Chain Whirler decks, and then you've got the rest of the people, or so, on Teferi kinds of decks. You still got to put Fatal Push in there.
Right, yeah, the mid-range decks just have it rough, having to prepare for those two extremes of the format both at once. That should be exiled, that Essence Scatter. Yeah, we'll see if we can get a judge to just correct that. That should be exiled via Doomfall.
Zombie token now attacking, made off of that Never to Return. There we go. Essence Scatter now exiled. Justin's life shuttle at 14.
So Justin was forced to a tough decision there with the Doomfall because he didn't have any threat that he needed to force through. But the reason he took Essence Scatter rather than Vraska's Contempt is if he finds another Scarab God, then he can play it and get an activation all the same turn because he has so much mana. In particular, is the does he have a copy of Scarab God waiting in his graveyard? I can't recall.
I don't think so.
Okay, but that could certainly come up if he's able
Sure.
to get a nice activation of an opposing Scarab God or a Champion of Wits if he can be fortunate enough to nab one of those in the graveyard. Just a single activation of the Scarab God in a tight game like this that's running on thin margins, that can be enough.
Zombie token doing a lot of work, knocking Justin's life total down to 8 now. Scarab God in hand.
Oh, wow. Look at that. So he could play it and get back the Glint Sleeve Siphoner, but we know that Dylan Brown has the pairing of Vraska's Contempt for the God itself and Fatal Push for whatever he returns.
Looks like Dylan Brown also has Torrential Gear Hulk and a Scarab God of his own.
Wow, so his couple of draw steps have been kind to him since we saw that Doomfall.
Absolutely.
Looks to me like, having seen those cards in Dylan Brown's hand, he's ahead in this game. But he's being patient. He's picking his spot.
Cycle, play a land, and say go. A lot of times you hear that a key to winning a control matchup, even though mid-range is next to blue-black on Dylan's deck choice, is playing the most lands.
Yep. Yeah, when these games go long and you have really mana-hungry cards like Champion of Wits and the Scarab God, being able to, leverage those by having a lot of lands and or just play multiple threats in the same turn can be a really big deal.
This zombie, though, is going the distance so far this game. Justin down to 6 now after another attack.
And that's what's great about this matchup is sometimes it's really explosive and you have these powerhouse cards like Teferi and Gear Hulk and Scarab God that win. But in the absence of that stuff, it is just a really grindy matchup where the players have to jockey for little 2-for-1 advantages. And the Never Return so far has been the MVP of the game. I mean, it got rid of a Champion of Wits that would have drawn Justin Andrus 4 more cards, and it dealt 12 damage because it's just a free zombie that you sort of look down and find in your graveyard.
Vraska's Contempt, however, is going to deal with that zombie token. Torrential Gear Hulk is the try here from Dylan Brown, met with an Essence Scatter from Justin. All right, now how about the one I really want? The Scarab God. There it is. Does Justin Andrus have something to say about this?
And you see how he navigated that. Not only does he have a Scarab God in play, but he's got the Gear Hulk in his graveyard to get back at instant speed in case he needs to protect his Scarab God. So that sequence there, getting the God into play, when you ask what's the signal that one player is really taking over, it's getting the Scarab God with that open mana.
Do you ever find yourself in a point, I suppose you probably do if enough lands are in play, where we can stack Scarab God activations a number of times?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Wow.
Okay. Scarab God here for Justin as well. And Dylan Brown is counting his lands.
Okay, so what Dylan can do is get back the Gear Hulk and flashback Essence Scatter. It's hard for me to see Andrus having a foil to that play.
All right, so here we go. Gear Hulk coming back. Flashback Essence Scatter on the Scarab God, and yes, that is good. Cast down on the Gear Hulk. But Dylan Brown ends up with the Scarab God in play. Nothing for Justin Andrus. Scarab God activation here. Dylan peering around at the graveyards. We're going to get back a Glint Sleeve Siphoner. Is this just for pure card advantage reasons?
Well, he's doing it as upkeep, which means he gets to drain Andrus for one more life. He gets to scry. This is all nice, but I think realistically, Dylan Brown is going to win almost regardless of what decisions he makes. If Andrus couldn't answer the Scarab God a turn ago, I mean, what's really going to change? And his life total is plummeting.
Drew the Eldest Reborn. And yes, he agrees with you, Reed, and he picks them up. Dylan Brown takes down game number 1 of our finals here over Justin Andrus. Blue-black mid-range over Esper Control. Okay, now here's where things get even more granular as we head to our sideboards. A lot of cards are shared across the main decks of both of these.
What makes sideboarding really challenging in this matchup is that the decks are so multi-dimensional. Mid-range is a great word to describe them because they have threats and answers. There's an aspect of beatdown and let me get out ahead and push an advantage, and there's aspects of control. Let me sit back and make my land drops and wait for my opponent to make the first move. So you have to be prepared for all these different cards your opponent can throw at you and all these different ways that the game can play out. You want to have as much late game power if the game comes down to a top deck war as you think you can afford, but you don't want to unbalance your mana curve and wind up losing to a quick Glint Sleeve Siphoner. So these players are going to try to tailor their answers, make their decks a little more powerful, but while still having enough balance and enough flexibility that they can manage almost any situation.
Let's take a look at what Dylan Brown might be bringing in here versus Justin Andrus' Esper Control. What do you think, Reed?
Well, if I'm sideboarding, the first cards I'm going to look at is anything that can give me card advantage. Anything that's even so much as a 2-for-1. Glimmer of Genius for sure coming in. Argyle's Bloodfast, great option, probably going to come in. Consign Oblivion, great option, probably going to come in. The next thing I'm going to look at is how can I get more answers to my opponent's bombs and card advantage stuff. So Negate and Duress, both cards that I'm going to look at. Maybe not going to bring in all 6, but for what it's worth, they are better on Dylan Brown's side against Justin Andrus with the more controlling version with Teferi. Duress and Negate are going to be stronger considerations, whereas when we touch on Justin Andrus' sideboard, he's going to have a tougher decision of how many of that type of effect he wants to turn to.
Let's take a look at Justin Andrus' Esper Control list. All right, what about the sideboarding here?
Well, Negate, I think Negate and Duress, he has access to 4 copies. He probably doesn't want to bring in all 4, but maybe 2, maybe 3, whatever he thinks is best and whatever way he wants to fight the battle. I do believe the Argyle's Bloodfast will come in. The Hostage Taker and the Eldest Reborn will very likely come in. And then the Glint Sleeve Siphoners, it's a little bit of a guessing game.
Right.
It's tough for Dylan Brown to leave in all 4 of his Fatal Pushes, and if you think your opponent's going to cut too much of their removal, you can get him with the Glint Sleeve Siphoners. But we'll see exactly what he decides to do with sideboarding and what cards he thinks he can afford to take out of his main deck.
And does a player like Justin have some kind of leverage here too, bringing a deck that's not exactly boilerplate?
Sure. My best guess is that Justin Andrus has practiced this matchup before, and Dylan Brown has not, at least not this exact configuration. No, everything is sort of on the spectrum of a mid-range matchup, and there's nothing completely new from Dylan Brown's perspective, and he's going to be able to sideboard according to the general category of matchup that he's facing, and then he's a player who's really shown himself to be able to navigate those interesting mid-game situations. So I don't think he's going to be completely dead in the water or anything like that, but the information and experience advantage I would give to Justin Andrus.
Filigree familiar. Unfortunately, not for this matchup.
No, I don't think so.
More for red. An update, by the way, from our neighbors to the north, Canada, Canadian national team. We now know who that will be. So if you don't want to spoiler, plug your ears right now. They are in the finals, so we don't know who has won the finals, but we do know the two players playing, Micah Hewer and Adam Ragsdale.
All right. Very nice.
No captain decided yet, of course. We do still have some more events this year to get through before those are decided. A little different from last year. Players here shuffling up for game number 2. Dylan Brown currently leads Justin Andrus 1-0 here in our finals. Both of these players have qualified for the U.S. team to represent us at the World Magic Cup coming up later this December in Barcelona.
Now, has the Canadian team reached out to you as a possible costume designer? What do you have prepared for them?
Okay. Somebody is going to be a bottle of maple syrup. Somebody is going to be a hockey skate. And somebody is going to be a bowl of poutine.
Wow. Designing that costume sounds like it would be pretty fun and challenging.
I mean, whoever wants to be the poutine is really the luckiest because I'm going to make it out of real food. Or the least lucky, however you want to look at it.
Sounds like it could get smelly.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be bad.
Don't make that person sit in the middle of the team because otherwise it could...
No worries. I'll put him on the end.
Have a negative impact. All right, well, Dylan Brown... that's one of the sideboard cards that we talked about. Duress looking great here. You can actually take any of the spells in Justin Andrus' hand. Search for Azcanta looks like a great bet. Just nab that one before it can do any damage. Chart a Course is still a good turn 2 play, but it's only going to smooth Andrus' hand and not actually provide card advantage.
So he's going to take the Search for Azcanta here, and here's a Glint Sleeve Siphoner for Justin Andrus. So at least one still in the deck here. Taking that Search for Azcanta. Can you talk a little bit about why that's so important?
Well, Search for Azcanta is a card that can come down early and provide a long-run advantage, which is really what this matchup is about. That's a key, is getting a permanent onto the board that you can sit back on and just feel confident that you're going to win in the long run. But being able to take it preemptively puts Dylan Brown in a much better position, and otherwise he would need to just sort of hunker down and let Andrus get a lot of value out of it and then hope to answer it with a Field of Ruin once it gets transformed. But that's a much tougher way to do it than just duressing on turn 1.
Cast Down takes care of the Glint Sleeve Siphoner, and Chart a Course here from Justin. I see a Hostage Taker in hand, so he brought that in out of the board. I remember when Hostage Taker got previewed, everyone seemed very excited to play it in Standard, and then it just kind of never happened.
Yeah, it's a fringe card. It's very powerful, but these colors have a lot of powerful options available to them. I mean, even a card like Gonti, Lord of Luxury, has seen a lot of play in the past, but none of our players in the finals have access to it. But just a lot, once you get to that 4, 5, 6 mana spot in these colors, there's so many great things you can play with, and Hostage Taker is just one of them.
Champion of Wits hits the table for Dylan Brown, pitches another 2 into the graveyard, and here's that Hostage Taker taking control of Dylan's Champion of Wits. We'll see how this Hostage Taker works out for Justin. All right, 4th land for Dylan Brown, passes turn back over to Justin Andrus.
You got to figure you're starting your turn by casting Champion of Wits.
Here we go, Champion of Wits cast for Justin. Let's draw and discard. You gotta love Champion of Wits discarding 2 Champion of Wits.
It's a good play. Yeah, I mean, Champion of Wits is a funny card in this deck because you're not really putting into your deck to cast it on turn 3. That's something that you do a lot, but the real reason you want it is so you can eternalize it on turn 7 and just have this this built-in card advantage engine to your deck where you can feel really confident about not flooding in the late game and winning if the game drags on indefinitely.
Hostage Taker gets in for 2, knocks Dylan down to 18. Supreme Will here. We'll take a look at 4. for Dylan Brown. Four cards in hand, 5 on the draw here, 2 Torrential Gearhulks I spy, as well as another Supreme Will. Land number 5 enters tapped and passes the turn back over to Justin, who's going to cycle.
You can always gather a little bit of information when you get to a mid-game scenario and your opponent plays a cycling land rather than cycling it. And similarly with the cast out, that's a card that I would expect Justin to hold on to if he wasn't desperate. If he had everything he felt he needed in his hand, he might hang on to it.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty strong answer to like the Scarab God.
Yeah, definitely.
Another Supreme Will from Justin, or excuse me, from Dylan, after an attack from Justin here with the Champion and the Hostage Taker.
I'm not sure, to be honest with you, why Justin cycled the cast out. It could be a little bit of impatience.
Yeah.
I probably would have tried to hold on to it a little longer.
Patience, definitely something both of these players have in spades after playing both of these decks all weekend long. And why I do not play Control.
Yeah, it's fair.
I mean, at some point, the patience meter has got to run out just the same as the decision meter has to. Ether Hub here for Dylan Brown. And we know he's got a couple of Gearhulks.
So the real dilemma here, if you're Justin, is, okay, you have pretty good position, you get to attack for 4 every turn, but you know that if your opponent hits that 7th land drop, they have 8 free cards to access from their graveyard.
Right.
And that's not even to mention this that's going to come down, Torrential Gearhulk.
Here's the Gearhulk from Dylan Brown. Can we do anything about it?
There's the card that's wrought so much havoc on Standard.
Oh, yes.
Won a Pro Tour in the hands of Shota Yasuoka. Has been played in everything from blue-black mid-range to Teamer Energy to Aetherworks Marvel to pure control decks.
Definitely a staple. Cast down, there was flashback on the Hostage Taker. The Eldest Reborn is going to come down and force a sacrifice there from Dylan of the Gearhulk.
So what happened? Did the Gearhulk not get into combat? Did he
guess
not to block Champion of Wits because he doesn't want it to go to the graveyard?
Yeah, that would be what it seems like.
It's fascinating.
What do you think about that?
Well, if Dylan had foreseen exactly how that was going to play out, I think one option is he could have flashbacked Supreme Will to look deeper into his library and then just blocked the Hostage Taker. But, of course, he didn't know whether or not Justin Andrus was going to have an instant speed removal spell, and he didn't want to risk letting his life total go too low. And then in regards to blocking the Champion of Wits, I understand not wanting to give your opponent access to those 4 more cards. You want to hope they're kind of stuck and can't progress their game plan, but at least it means Andrus can't spend his mana on anything else that turn. Overall, there were a couple decision points there, and I think I like the decision to not block Champion of Wits, but maybe I would have preferred going for the Supreme Will instead of the cast down, if that was the plan.
Chapter 2 here on the Eldest Reborn will have Dylan discarding a Swamp. Eldest Reborn number 2 here for Justin. All right, so Champion of Wits Eternalize is now sacrificed. And the Champion of Wits that was not blocked gets in for another 2.
Eldest Reborn is a card that Andrus has access to that Dylan Brown does not, and looking to be very powerful in this matchup. I mean, these are decks that are based on sticking single really potent threats, and that's not even to mention how powerful the 3rd chapter is, getting to rebuy any creature from either graveyard. Can't see exactly where this game is going, but it looks to me like those Chapter 3s on the Eldest Reborns could wind up being very, very powerful.
Here's Liliana Death's Majesty for Dylan.
Dylan getting his own Chapter 3 straight away.
That's true. We're going to bring back the Gear Hulk. And there's that Supreme Will flashback. Liliana Death's Majesty, a one of in both of these decks, by the way.
I'm a big fan of this card. Liliana, no one would call it one of the best cards in Standard. It usually shows up, like you said, as a one of. Sometimes black decks don't even play it, but I do really, really like it. And I think in these blue-black decks, the ability to rebuy a Torrential Gearhulk or a Scarab God, particularly on turns where you have all your mana open, is just so powerful. It gives you, high-level control over the game. Plus, we see those patterns where, your opponent might have an Essence Scatter that they're waiting for you to cast one of your big creatures, and instead you slip a Planeswalker in. Just adds another dimension, another angle of attack.
Okay, we are advancing our chapters on our sagas here. A judge is mentioning something to the table.
So I think the way sagas work is it's just an automatic action that they both tick up, and then Justin will get to choose the order that he puts the triggers on the stack.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the third chapter on the Eldest Reborn is I think it is a targeted effect, so that means he won't have the opportunity to return any card that Dylan discards. So some rules subtleties going on here that could potentially impact what's going to happen.
Put target creature or planeswalker card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. All right, so has he ordered the discard first?
I think so.
That would make sense.
He's probably chosen his target, but required Dylan to discard first. Thankfully, we have the very best judges to handle rules nuances like this. And the judges have been working hard.
Oh, my gosh.
As hard as we have and as hard as the players have for these marathon matches.
Big thanks to all of them for being here this weekend. Without judges, this would not be possible whatsoever. There goes a Swamp on the discard. And Hostage Taker was the target here for Chapter 3. Steals a Gearhulk.
Yeah, that's a nice situation, because the fact that it has Flash insulates him against Dylan killing the Hostage Taker and getting back his own Gearhulk. Gives him a lot of flexibility. He can rebuy a counter spell or any of the instants that he's got in his rather large graveyard over there.
Yeah, that was sweet. And the Chabmute of Wits gets in an attack, takes down Liliana.
Yeah, Dylan's draw sort of failed him there. I thought for sure he was going to be able to protect the Liliana when he made the play of minusing on the Gearhulk, but he didn't find any cheap removal spells off of the draw 4, so worked out kind of badly.
And now Justin Andrus has this Hostage Taker with the Gearhulk under it, so talk about getting your value from Chapter 3 of the Eldest Reborn. We're going to cast it.
When I said he didn't find anything off the draw 4, I meant the 4 cards you looked at with Supreme Will, just clarification.
Well, Dylan Brown's got a Gearhulk of his own. Two mana available on Justin's side of the table. It's good.
Okay, so this is a tense situation because a lot of this game depends on which player. Okay, so never mind. It's going to be Justin that's able to get that Gearhulk back from the graveyard.
So Chapter 3 on the Eldest Reborn fires here. Gearhulk comes into play under Justin's control. Cast down hits the Gearhulk on the flashback from the other Gearhulk. And swing for 4. Dylan Brown down to 6. And here's to Fairy. Teferi is good. Ticks up for Justin. All right, have we turned the corner pretty significantly here?
Yeah, he's way ahead. Again, the only way I see Dylan Brown clawing back is if he can stick a Scarab God, but, based on what I know of Andrus's hand and the Teferi being able to tuck something away, I think Dylan Brown is pretty much just going to die next turn.
Champion of Wits here for Justin. Draw some more cards. Everything in play on his side of the table. Discard some lands. Untap some lands. And say go. I've got to say, this is more creatures than you often find in play in these kinds of matchups.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is Justin Andrus doesn't even have Torrential Gearhulk in his deck. Why
Yes.
register the card when you're going to have this much ability to just play with your opponents?
So unfair. If you want to play with it, put it in your own deck. Gosh, Justin. Yeah, Dylan here just really up against it. Here's Scarab God.
Well, that's how it has to start.
Okay, step one.
Unfortunately for him, he does not have a Vraska's Contempt in his own graveyard. Otherwise, he could get back the Gearhulk and start taking down the threats one at a time on the opposing side of the battlefield.
All right, first things first, tick up on Teferi. Draw. We found a Search for Azcanta. Taking a look through Dylan's graveyard. First, Doomfall.
Okay, so Dylan might not be dead. He can Vraska's Contempt the Gearhulk and go up to 8 and then take 6. Andrus, I suppose, could kill his own creature in response to Fizzle life gain and deal the last 2 points to see exactly how it plays out.
All right, there's a Vraska's Contempt on the Gearhulk.
Okay, he doesn't go for lethal in that way.
So Dylan Brown saved from the brink here. There's a Doomfall to nab the Scarab God, Dylan Brown's last card in hand. And here we go. What is your draw? It is nothing, and Dylan Brown packs him in. We're going to get a game 3 here. Justin Andrus has tied everything up. Esper Control versus Blue-Black mid-range. 1 game apiece here in our finals of U.S. Nationals.
Oh, God, the players have the same color sleeves, and
No, do they really?
what a mess.
Oh, no. You better be extra careful. These decks are not all about playing with only their own cards here. Good catch there, Reed. The number of times I've accidentally shuffled somebody else's card into my deck has not been 0.
No, of course not.
Thankfully, I use bright pink sleeves most of the time, so
it sets you apart a little bit.
it's not usually a problem. I'll say that. All right, going into game 3. With these two players have played a ton of Magic today. Lots of it extraordinarily challenging. Lots of decisions to be made. Hours and hours of Magic. And they've made it all the way here. And now they've got to think about sideboarding for this 3rd game. Do you think we're changing things up a bit?
Yeah, the players could make some minor adjustments based on what they saw in Game 2 and, one more data point about how the matchup's likely to play out. But I don't think they'll be making any dramatic overhauls. Justin, in particular, looks to be pretty satisfied with what he's put together.
Now, I'm not exactly sure about this year's Nationals, but last year's was a split, World Magic Cup. Last year's was split format as well.
Yeah, half Team Sealed deck and half Unified Standard, which is a really fun deck building challenge for anyone who's not familiar with Unified. The rule is that you have to build 3 decks, and if a card appears in one player's deck, it cannot appear in the other 2. So, for example, if I have a Braid in my deck, then my 2 teammates can't play with a Braid, even if it's just 1 copy.
The team aspect of it, I think, is pretty cool too. Not only do you have to make those decisions based on what your teammates want to play, but also being able to help each other out potentially with plays during the game. It was really cool to walk around the room and watch how the various teams from different countries worked together or left each other alone. It was pretty interesting to see.
Different teams are going to have different dynamics with that regard.
Sometimes the team captain too, can kind of take a lot of times a younger player under their wing, sort of, and get to teach them throughout the tournament, which is pretty neat to see. I remember the Japanese team, the youngest player kind of watching Shota, just from his shoulder, watching him play. It was pretty cool to see. Obviously didn't need any help, and he was playing a red deck, an aggressive red deck in the standard portion of that tournament, and I went over to take a peek, and I have never in my life seen anybody play faster Magic than I saw that day.
Yeah, impressive stuff.
So congratulations on these two for making our team for the World Magic Cup, Dylan Brown and Justin Andrus. The decks they've chosen to bring to this tournament, Blue-Black Mid-Range, has been a popular one the last few weekends. And Justin Andrus preferring to bring his own kind of homebrew version of Esper Control, which has been pretty cool. So props to him for innovating for this tournament this weekend.
Yeah, I love to see a player bringing their own take on a deck, particularly this late in the season. It's really just, what Magic's all about. You pick your colors, you pick your cards you like, and you make it work. Do it your own way.
If you want to play in Nationals, if you're watching this and thinking, oh, this looks like a lot of fun, I might want to try and do this next year. Well, you can. In the U.S. here, it's 500 Planeswalker points is what you need to be able to qualify. If you've played a couple of GPs or Friday Night Magics, got those Planeswalker points, you might be qualified. Other countries playing their Nationals this weekend as well. Canada, we just mentioned, in their finals right now too. Different Planeswalker points level thresholds are required for different countries, so the U.S. is 500. But it's a fun tournament. About 740 players this weekend came to battle, which is pretty cool.
2 remaining.
And 2 remaining. Here we go. Game number 3 of the finals. Dylan Brown versus Justin Andrus. Blue-Black Mid-Range via Esper Control. Search for us. Ooh, I was going to say it was a search. I spoke too soon. Argwell's Bloodfast for Dylan Brown.
And I actually see that Justin has his pick between Bloodfast and Search for Azcanta. I may have deployed the Search, to be honest with you. The Bloodfast seems to me more of a late game card. Once you've spent your mana playing out your hand, you can devote it to the Bloodfast.
Dueling Bloodfasts on the table here.
Maybe he just values the Bloodfast so much more and wants to protect it from duress.
In a vacuum, which one do you like better?
In this matchup, the Bloodfast is probably better. But I think in general, Search for Azcanta is a stronger card.
All right, so both players starting with Bloodfast on the table here. And Justin Andrus is going to take the hit. That'll tie things up at 18. We saw a match last weekend where a player Bloodfasted himself down to 4, I want to say. Was dealt no other damage. Here's a Glint Sleeve Siphoner for Justin. Talk about having some card advantage through what you've got on the table, sitting there, Bloodfast and Glint Sleeve Siphoner. Supreme Will was tried, but it's going to be met with a negate. What's your
Oh, just, not clear to me that that's a card that is so necessary for either player to fight over.
Sure. Duress from Dylan Brown. Checking out Justin's hand. Fatal Push, Search for Azcanta, Eldest Reborn, and 2 copies of Vraska's Contempt.
So the Eldest Reborn was the driving force between Andrus winning Game 2. I could see Dylan Brown taking it just as the most powerful card. However, these are all kind of reactive cards other than the Search for Azcanta, so if Dylan Brown isn't interested in playing out creatures and wants to just sit on his own Bloodfast for a little while, then he could consider taking Search for Azcanta. That's what he does.
All right, Search for Escanta hits the bin after that duress from Dylan Brown. Back over to Justin Andrus. Draws a land for the turn. Glintsleeve Seifner doing its work here, getting in for 2, getting some energy. Dylan Brown down to 16, playing a land tapped, and you mentioned how that can sometimes be a little bit of a clue. And we're going to draw some cards here for Dylan Brown. That Bloodfast proving to be so valuable on both sides of the table. Dylan Brown down to 12.
One game separates these players from title of national champion, following in the footsteps of a lot of great players before them. John Finkel, Josh Utter-Layton, Paul Cheon, just to name a couple.
Sorry, I can't help but be a little mean to Paul. It's just the way of the world.
Do you know when I was first following the Pro Tour, Paul Cheon was like the best player in the world. Like I remember him playing the deciding game to make the United States team world champions.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, Paul was a big deal.
Was. Being the operative word in that sentence.
You really do like being mean to Paul.
Sorry. It's just too easy. Just kidding. We love Paul. Paul's great. I love doing Pro Tour coverage with him.
Yeah, Paul really is great for a number of reasons. He's a really good guy to have in the Magic community, both on talent and kindness. Good example.
Oh, absolutely. It's super rare to just find, somebody who's just like excellent at Magic, excellent at talking about Magic, and just a wonderful human being all around as well. And loves to eat food. Glintsleeve Seifner in here for Justin. Another activation of the Bloodfast here. And I have a question. How low do you go with Bloodfast?
As low as you want, pretty much. I mean, just got to be careful not to die to that Glintsleeve Seifner, but particularly the Bloodfast, you can kind of be fast and loose with it because it does transform into the Temple of Aclazotz, which can help you claw back. These blue, black, and Esper decks don't have any direct damage or haste or reach, so you just have to be careful not to accidentally kill yourself, and other than that, the sky's the limit.
All right, so we're going to see this transformation into the Temple of Aclazotz here for Dylan Brown.
In fact, Dylan may have intentionally gone so low as to flip it because the mana ramping ability can be really strong, just having access to one more land.
Yeah, and you mentioned how powerful it is in these types of matchups to have the most lands in play. Here's a Never to Return targeting that Glintsleeve Seifner. So Temple now able to tap for mana. It can also sacrifice a creature, and you gain life equal to the sacrificed creature's toughness. All right, looks like that is going to be good. Glintsleeve Seifner heads to the yard. Return proving to be a little bit, as you said earlier, of mini Vraska's Contempt, in a way. Sometimes you end up with a zombie.
So perhaps our final update before we crown a champion. In our fourth playoff match, Kevin Jones was the winner, meaning we can officially pencil him as the third-place finisher of U.S. Nationals. That's mostly just for bragging rights, but just in case somebody on the team can't make it to the World Cup, Kevin would be the alternate. So congratulations to him. Really good run. Yeah,
really great run. Congrats, Kevin Jones. Brought a unique deck to the tournament as well. Jeskai. Right, so the players taking a bit of a moment here on their decisions for their next play. Dylan Brown has drawn about 1,000 cards, thanks to that Bloodfast.
And This game really illustrates the point that a lot of the battle of this matchup is not fought on the battlefield. It's not fought with creatures. It's fought with sculpting the cards in your hand, gaining card advantage, preparing for those late game fights, setting up, sculpting a game plan, and that's what this game has been so far. It's hard for us to really comment on every single turn because the players are hiding their information. A lot of the fight is based on drawing cards, and there's not a lot of explosive combat steps or exchanges of resources yet. But trust me that there will be.
Oh, yes. The moment that we wait for is that one when there's a huge fight, the stack becomes enormous. The players now biding their time. You mentioned it earlier, patience.
So that was all in the end step of Justin Andreas. Then he had to discard due to having 8 cards.
Pretty good problem to have. Fatal Push hitting the yard. Another land for Dylan Brown. As the game goes longer, Reed, do you think one of these players has more of an advantage?
No, not based on deck list. I think it's the individual texture of the game and the way the players are going to navigate that creates an advantage, and not just the cards that are in either player's deck.
Glint Sleeve Siphoner for Dylan Brown. Added to the team here. Counting up his lands as well. Fully stocked hand. Plenty in hand for Justin as well.
So the Siphoner here is not a big play. We're not at that big explosive exchange of resources yet. This is sort of just a feeler play. Let me spend some mana. Let me make sure I don't have to discard to hand size. But I think Dylan is expecting this to get killed, and he is totally okay with that. He's not even going to tap the Temple of Aklazats to sacrifice it.
Cast Down takes care of that Glint Sleeve Siphoner activation here from Justin on the Arguel's Bloodfast. Hits himself down to 9. Chart a Course is what we find here. Doing some mental math, tapping it out on the table. And we'll enter his turn.
He didn't draw an extra card there, partly because maybe he didn't want to leave the shields down if he has a counterspell, and also he may have just had to discard to hand size, feature an extra card, so why bother?
Chart a Course. Here we'll kick things off for Justin on this turn. Card we're not super used to seeing in these colors.
This is definitely the control matchup category of game. Of all the wide variety of games that these two decks could play against one another, this is the one that's going the slowest, most about hitting land drops. The battle's being fought with cards in hand, not on the battlefield, at least so far.
And these finals, all of our top 8, for that matter, untimed, but the players, obviously do still have to play in a timely manner. But these kinds of deck decisions do factor into what people decide to bring to a tournament too, because you have to, sometimes worry if you're going to find yourselves in these positions at some point during the day that a draw might be your fate. Bloodfast activation here for Justin again. And he's keeping the theme going with just one. Finds a Teferi in his draw step.
One of the strongest cards for either player to draw into at this stage would be something like a Duress. Something like where you can invest a very small amount of mana, gather information, strip away one of your opponent's key cards, and create a weakness in their hand. And Doomfall is actually able to do the same thing at just the cost of 2 more mana. So this is a great way for Justin Andrews to start.
Doomfall is going to be met with a negate from Dylan Brown, so he wants to fight over this.
Yeah, but this is okay. I mean, it's possible Negate would have just been the best card to take away with the Doomfall anyway. Justin is content trading resources, particularly because he's the one with the Bloodfast still on the battlefield, and he's got to fight through that Negate sooner or later anyway.
Here's Torrential Gearhulk from Dylan.
Ooh, and the fact that Dylan counted Andrus's lands.
Yep.
It seems like he's smelling blood. He's seen an opportunity, and now he's going to pick it. He's going to do this trick of casting a must-answer threat at the end of Justin's turn, then untapping and doing it again, and really taxing the opponent's mana and answer cards and seeing if he can slip something through the cracks.
Okay, let's see if this works out for Dylan here. There's the Gearhulk. Justin kind of forced into an answer here, and there's Essence Scatter and a Negate. From Dylan, do we want to spend something else just now?
So, yeah, pretty bad spot for Andrus. This is a winning exchange from Dylan. He's going to restock his hand, look for more threats. We might see Justin just cast Vraska's Contempt while Dylan's tapped out, but that leaves the shields completely down for something like the Scarab God.
Right. Do you think that you would Contempt here?
I think so. It's quite a large life swing because if you wait until Dylan untaps, you can sacrifice it via Temple of Aklazats, which both means Dylan will gain 6 life and Justin's Vraska's Contempt will be fizzled and he won't gain 2 life. So I think it's a good spot to do it.
All right, so Justin agrees and he Vraska's Contempts there.
Also, if Dylan does slam the Scarab God, at least the saving grace is that you got that Gearhulk exiled instead of put into the graveyard.
Yeah, that's a good point. Dylan Brown on 4 life, Justin Andrus on 9. Here in game number 3 of our finals. Glint Sleeve Siphoner the play for Dylan. This little 2-1 has come out a number of times in this game. And there's a Scarab God from Dylan Brown. Three mana, 4 still available for Brown as well.
That crucial number, 4 mana.
Yep.
So first order of business for Andrus is do not let Dylan Brown untap with the Scarab God. Once he gets past that hurdle, there's a lot of other things he's got to think about. The Glint Sleeve Siphoner threatening to draw more cards, progressing his own game plan. But for now, the Scarab God is the emergency red flashing light that he's got in front of him.
Eldest Reborn in hand for Justin. There's a Teferi.
Yeah, just starting with a Vraska's Contempt on the Scarab God looks pretty good. Dylan might counter, or he might just activate the Scarab God in response. He could also sacrifice it to the temple, and then he'll get to put it back in his hand at the end of the turn. Also, I would feel a little more comfortable with 5 life if I was Dylan.
Yes.
Sitting there at 4 for a really extended period of time is dangerous. But looks like he's going to go with the immediate value of plucking another Glint Sleeve Siphoner from the graveyard.
All right, so Glint Sleeve coming back. Zombie mode for Dylan. Scarab God heading into exile. Justin buffering the life total a little bit more.
And maybe this is a good spot for the Eldest Reborn. It would mean Dylan gets to untap with 1 Siphoner, but maybe it's the best you can do.
Yeah, it's definitely tempting to wait with the Eldest Reborn, but there's just so many ways for Dylan to be able to get creatures back out of the graveyard. Justin bumped up to 11 there after that Contempt, by the way. Dylan sitting on the precarious number 4.
Players taking this really slow, really seriously. They know that these are the crucial turns that are going to determine our national champion.
Yeah, you see Justin there had his head in his hand as he was debating what to do. Really hemming and hawing over this Eldest Reborn, I think.
Yeah, he could play that. He could play Teferi looks like a bad option to me because it will just die to one creature or the other. And yeah, I think it's just basically the Eldest Reborn. Vraska's Contempt is another option, but I don't really know why you would choose that over the Eldest Reborn. It uses your mana. It gets the Saga ticking up, which could be important in 2 turns.
All right, we've made a choice, and it is Teferi. Or is it?
We have not made a choice.
Okay, never mind. Back it up.
We should make a choice. This is bordering on too slow.
Okay, it is going to be Teferi here for Justin. And we are going to put that giant Glint Sleeve Siphoner away. And Dylan is going to get to go to his turn now. All right, let's pay some more life. Down to 3. And you talked about watching for critical turns and everything. That one certainly was there on both sides of the table. We saw 2 big decisions, what to do with the death of the Scarab God, essentially, and what to do after.
Yeah, so Justin did a pretty good job on his turn. He cleaned up a lot of the mess that Dylan had managed to create for him. But the real deciding factor in this game is Dylan got to start the fight at the end of Justin's turn. Then he got a turn where he got to spend all his own mana, flood the board, and Justin from there is playing catch-up, and he can remove permanents, but both players with such strong hands after the extended period of time with just Argel's Bloodfasts going, and now Dylan being able to spend his mana better, faster, put threats on the table, Justin just falling further and further behind.
Yeah, and now a Doomfall from Dylan Brown is going to take care of that Eldest Reborn from Justin's hand, leaving him with just a land and Vraska's Contempt. And here comes the Siphoner to take care of Teferi. Action still in hand for Dylan Brown as well. I can see a Champion of Wits, another Torrential Gear Hulk.
Yeah, he's got to be loving that Gear Hulk with Negate in the graveyard. That just gives him, a sense of safety when he's already ahead in the game.
Champion of Wits finding a pair of lands. We're going to pitch 2 of them. And this is swung back around in Dylan Brown's favor.
Yeah, he's most definitely ahead here. I think if he navigates carefully, he's only a couple turns away from sealing it up.
Watching through this matchup, Reed, and we talked about the kind of critical plays last turn, what do you think people can take away as kind of a lesson for how you're playing these control decks?
So Dylan identified the one resource in the game where he had an advantage. Both players were making their land drops. Both players had 7 cards in hand. Both players had Argel's Bloodfast. So all of that stuff was parity. Dylan wasn't going to be able to brute force win through card advantage or anything like that. So he identified the way he was going to put Justin to the test and the way he was going to create an advantage for him was mana. And he very crucially picked a turn where Justin had already spent mana on something. Justin had led with Doomfall, and he started fighting a battle at the end of Justin's turn. Justin was obliged to react, tap his mana, and then Dylan got to essentially start playing the game first with all of his mana open to start deploying his hand, and that's why he's ahead right now.
Wow, awesome stuff. Justin's got that Vraska's Contempt in hand that Dylan knows about. It's going to point it at the Glint Sleeve Siphoner, and there's Torrential Gearhulk on the battlefield, and Negate in the graveyard. Activation here of the Bloodfast to draw a card for Justin to try and get himself out of this mess or do anything about what is about to happen. Sure enough, Negate flashback on the Vraska's Contempt, and now Dylan Brown has a Gearhulk. Here's a Doomfall from Justin. Sure, we'll get rid of the Champion of Wits.
Yeah, Justin exiled the Vraska's Contempt. It should just be in his graveyard. Not the biggest deal, as I think the game's shaping up to be over in about 2 turns.
And there it is. Dylan Brown takes this finals here over Justin Andrus with his blue-black mid-range deck, and that is the look of somebody who has played a lot of Magic today. Congratulations to Dylan Brown. You are our U.S. national champion.
Yeah, awesome stuff from Dylan. I'm really impressed the way he navigated those really complex marathon matches, both the semifinals and the finals. Just great work.
Congratulations as well to Justin Andrus and his Esper Control build. There's a look at our top 8 bracket, and congratulations to everybody who made our top 8 today. It was a hard-fought tournament. Lots of very interesting games and pretty cool decks that people brought. Justin Andrus is somebody who brought one of them with his Esper Control list. All right, what do you think of that finals, Reed?
It was great. I love to watch that stuff. I mean, we had 2 different takes on a similar archetype, many cards in common, a few differentiated, and it wasn't just about the decks. It was also about the way the players chose to navigate the situations, and that was really just pure Magic, employing every skill and every bit of effort and focus the players had, and we eventually, through hard-fought games, reached a champion.
And blue and black, do you think these colors are on the rise now in Standard?
Yeah, I think blue and black had good showing last weekend at Grand Prix Pittsburgh, and now fully 4 blue-black Scarab God decks in our top 8. Really impressive showing. Showed that it can handle a wide variety of situations, anything from mono red to control to these mirror matches.
If you're looking ahead to the next weekend, or when people are going to be playing some more Standard, are you thinking of ways to deal with the Scarab God now a little bit more?
Yeah, well, maybe it's time for forests to make a resurgence in Standard. One card that these blue-black decks do not have a great answer to is Lifecrafter's Bestiary. So if you can come up with a green deck that is well-balanced, can handle the extremes of the format, and prey on these blue-black decks, that could be a good next step.
All right, well, let's head down to our feature match area and have a chat with Dylan Brown. Hi, Dylan, Maria, and Reed here in the booth with you. How are you feeling? You're a champion.
A little exhausted, but incredibly happy.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about your deck choice this weekend. Blue-black midrange, why did you choose to bring this deck to the table?
Leading up to the event we knew we were coming, I watched GP Pittsburgh and watched Oliver 2 play with it. It looked like exactly what I wanted to be doing in the format. Changed just a little bit of the deck, but it was pretty great to start, and I knew that was going to be a good choice for this weekend. You
had some really long matches this weekend. Talk a little bit about just kind of the toll that can take on you.
Yeah, the semifinals match was just embarrassment after embarrassment. I made a lot of mistakes, just playing too fast, missed triggers, just missing just a lot of things, but the nerves were getting to me a little more than I would expect, and it was a long day, but...
Don't beat yourself up too much for that stuff, Dylan. You fought hard. You earned it well. Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
I don't want to exhaust you by making you talk through the strategic steps that you just worked through, but I just want to compliment you on a really well-played Game 3 there. You did a great job showing patience and picking your spot where you eventually started the battle with the end-of-turn Torrential Gearhulk and just leveraged that mana advantage to stay ahead.
Oh, thank you. I actually am proud of how I played that one. Unlike my semifinals, I think I like the decisions I made in that game.
Yeah, you should be proud.
And you're going to Barcelona. That's pretty cool.
Incredibly exciting, yeah.
Well, congratulations, Dylan Brown. You played some exhausting Magic today. You made some great choices, and you've got to be feeling great. You're a national champion.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much, Dylan
Thank you.
Brown. We'll be seeing you in Spain later this year in December. Whew, what a tournament, Reed. All right, general takeaways from what we saw. We played Dominaria Draft. It was excellent to see that again. I'm really happy we got to draft again. We saw Standard now. We're kind of seeing it take a little bit of a different shape. What are your takeaways from the weekend?
Well, first of all, just a really, really intense, challenging tournament that the players were put through. I mean, 2 days of play, 2 different formats, and in the end, shaping up to the semifinals and the finals, it wasn't just about deck choice. It wasn't just, did I pick the right cards to show up with? It was also, am I going to play them in the crucial moments? Am I going to navigate those really key turns well? So every skill necessary in Magic came into play this weekend, and Dylan Brown, the one who played, the hardest, the best, had a good deck choice, navigated through draft. Congratulations to him. He did a great job, and he's a deserving champion.
Congratulations to all the players who came out this weekend. More than 700 competed at Nationals this year. If it looked like fun to you, you can qualify next year. 500 points will get you qualified to play in next year's national tournament. Thanks to everybody who watched at home, by the way. Thanks to all of our judges and staff here in the building. Rashad, BDM, Megan and Corbin on writing this weekend. Athena and BJ in our feature match area. Card Titan and Ultra Pro for making this thing happen. GP Sao Paulo next weekend. All right, everybody. See you then.